You.
Hey,
Let me see some identification.
yeah,
Right now.
I'm just sitting here eating my lunch.
Oh, okay, sure. Eating lunch. I said I want to see your papers.
I don't have to show you anything. I haven't done anything wrong.
Look at me when I'm talking to you. You think you have a choice here?
Please, just lower your voice. There are families.
Get your hands where I
The officer standing over him sneered. Huh, okay, sure, eating lunch. I said I want to see your papers. I don't have to show you anything, the man replied, keeping his voice calm. I haven't done anything wrong. The officer stepped closer. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You think you have a choice here. Please just lower your voice, the man said. There are families here. That was the wrong thing to say. The officer's hand moved to his belt. He unclipped the strap on his holster. Get your hands where I can see them, the officer shouted, or I will drag you out of this booth myself. The officer had no idea what he just walked into. In the next 45 seconds, this illegal stop is going to cost the US government a record-breaking $22.7 million. The man quietly eating his sandwich wasn't a suspect. He was a highly decorated 11-year veteran of the FBI. While the officer screamed commands, he didn't realize his victim was a certified expert in high-risk negotiations who outranked him in every possible way. And the restaurant security cameras were capturing every second of the mistake. Before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever been treated unfairly by someone in power? Drop your answer in the comments. But Agent Scott had no idea he was about to face a threat from his own government. Scott was a senior special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He had spent the last 11 years working on some of the toughest cases in the country. He specialized in counterterrorism and catching dangerous fugitives. He wasn't just a guy with a badge. He was an expert. He had spent years training to stay calm in life-or-death situations. He knew how to talk people down from violent outbursts. Most importantly, he knew federal law better than almost anyone. On this Tuesday afternoon, however, he wasn't looking for trouble. He was off-duty. He wasn't wearing his suit or his tactical gear. He was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He was unarmed. He had just finished a long morning of paperwork and stopped at a local deli to grab a quick bite before heading back to the office. He just wanted 10 minutes of peace. Instead, he found himself in the middle of a nightmare. He knew that one wrong move could end his life, but he also knew something else. He knew his rights, and he knew that the man standing over him was breaking every rule in the book. The ICE agent involved, however, had a very different approach to his job. Agent Miller worked for enforcement and removal operations. His job was to find people who were in the country illegally, but Miller had a reputation. He didn't like doing research. He preferred to use force. People in the neighborhood knew him. There were stories about Miller and his partner. They liked to walk into businesses and demand papers from anyone who looked suspicious. They didn't have warrants. They didn't have proof. They just used fear to get what they wanted. In the past 6 months alone, there were 3 complaints filed against his unit. One business owner said Miller threatened to shut down his shop because he asked for a warrant. Another said Miller handcuffed a delivery driver for no reason, then let him go without an apology. Miller believed that his badge gave him total power. He thought he could do whatever he wanted, and nobody could stop him. He called it proactive policing. The locals called it harassment. Power without control is dangerous, and on this day, Miller was feeling powerful. He walked into that deli looking for a target. He scanned the room and saw a man eating alone. He decided right then and there that he had found his suspect. He didn't care about the law. He just wanted to dominate someone. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should officers with a history of bad behavior be allowed to keep their badges? Type yes or no below. It was 12:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The lunch rush was in full swing. The restaurant was a popular spot in the city. It was loud and happy. You could hear the sound of forks hitting plates and people laughing. There were families eating together. A young couple was sitting near the window. Waiters were rushing back and forth with trays of food. Agent Scott was sitting in a booth near the back wall. He liked to sit facing the door. It was a habit from his FBI training. He liked to see who was coming and going. At 12:32 p.m., the bell on the door chimed. The mood in the room changed instantly. Agent Miller and his partner walked in. They were wearing tactical vests with police written in big yellow letters. They had heavy belts with radios, batons, and guns. They didn't look like they were there for lunch. They looked like they were there for a fight. The chatter in the restaurant died down. People looked at their plates. The staff looked nervous. They had seen these guys before. Miller scanned the room. His eyes landed on Agent Scott. Scott wasn't doing anything. He was just taking a bite of his sandwich, but for Miller, that was enough. That's when the agent decided that simply eating lunch was a crime. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe. We expose the truth about abuse of power every single week. Miller marched straight to the booth. He didn't say hello, he just started barking orders. Papers, Miller demanded, now. Scott put his sandwich down slowly. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. Why? He asked. Because I said so, Miller snapped. I'm conducting an investigation. What crime are you investigating? Scott asked. His voice was steady. He kept his hands flat on the table where Miller could see them. I don't need to explain myself to you, Miller yelled. He was getting louder now. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting, Scott said. I am eating lunch. Am I free to go? You're not going anywhere, Miller shouted. The restaurant was dead silent. Every eye was on booth number 4. A mother at the next table pulled her child closer. Then things went from bad to terrifying. Miller took a step back. His hand gripped his pistol. He pulled it out of the holster. Gun, someone whispered. Miller pointed the weapon directly at Scott's chest. Get on the ground, now, or I will shoot. Scott didn't move. He knew if he reached for his pocket, Miller would fire. He knew if he stood up too fast, Miller would fire. He had to stay perfectly still. I am a federal agent, Scott said clearly. I am with the FBI. I don't care who you are, Miller screamed. He was shaking. His finger was on the trigger. Get on the ground. This was the moment where training took over. Miller was losing control. He was angry and scared. Scott was analyzing the threat. He saw the shaking hand. He saw the finger on the trigger. Officer, Scott said, keeping his voice low, you are making a mistake. Put the weapon away. Shut up, Miller yelled, last warning. Customers were hiding under tables now. The staff had run to the kitchen. One waitress was huddled behind the counter, dialing 911 on her cell phone. Please, she whispered into the phone. There's a man with a gun. He's going to kill someone. What the ICE agent didn't know was that the call had already gone through. Help was 3 minutes away. But 3 minutes is a long time when a gun is pointed at your heart. Scott looked Miller in the eye. He was calculating the odds. If he lunged for the gun, he might get shot. If he stayed seated, he might get shot. Miller was escalating. He was past the point of listening. He wanted to hurt someone. 10 minutes earlier, this was just a lunch break. Now it was a standoff. Scott decided to try one more time. He moved his head very slowly towards his back pocket. My credentials, Scott said slowly. They are in my back pocket. I am going to reach for them slowly. Do not shoot. Don't move, Miller screamed. He took a step closer. The barrel of the gun was only a few feet from Scott's face. Suddenly, sirens wailed outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the front window. The door burst open. Police, drop it. A police sergeant from the local department ran in with his weapon drawn. 2 other officers were right behind him. They saw Miller pointing a gun at a man in a booth. Drop the weapon, the sergeant yelled at Miller. Do it now. Miller looked confused. He turned his head. I'm federal agents, he shouted back. I'm conducting an arrest. I don't care, the sergeant yelled. Lower your weapon right now. For a second, nobody moved. It was a standoff between the police and ICE. Then Miller slowly lowered his gun. He looked annoyed. This guy is resisting, he told the police. He refused to show ID. The police sergeant moved in. He didn't look at Miller, he looked at Scott. Sir, are you okay? Scott let out a breath he had been holding for 5 minutes. I'm okay, he said. He slowly reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open. The gold badge of the FBI shined under the restaurant lights. Special Agent Scott, he said firmly, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The room went completely silent. Miller's face turned pale. He looked at the badge. Then he looked at Scott. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The arrogance vanished. In 1 second, he realized he had just held a senior FBI agent at gunpoint because he didn't like the way he looked. I didn't know, Miller stammered. He tried to holster his gun, but his hands were shaking. You didn't ask, Scott said coldly. He stood up from the booth. He wasn't the victim anymore. He was the highest-ranking officer in the room. Witnesses started to pop their heads up. He didn't do anything. A woman at the next table shouted. He was just eating. That officer is crazy. I saw the whole thing, the manager said, walking out from the kitchen. The guy in the booth was polite. The other guy just pulled a gun on him. Scott looked at the police sergeant. I want a supervisor here, Scott said, and I want this man's weapon secured. Now. Miller tried to argue. Look, we're all on the same team. Here it was just a misunderstanding. Pointing a loaded weapon at an unarmed federal agent is not a misunderstanding, Scott said. It's a felony. The police sergeant took Miller's gun. The power dynamic had completely flipped. The bully was now the suspect. Wait until you hear what the security cameras revealed. Type justice in the comments if you think Miller deserves to lose his job. By 1:00 p.m., the restaurant parking lot was full of government vehicles. The local police captain arrived. 2 supervisors from the Icefield office showed up. A senior official from the FBI was also on the way. They set up a command post in the corner of the restaurant. The first thing they did was separate the agents. Miller was put in the back of a police car. Scott sat in a booth giving his statement. The investigation started immediately. The police captain asked the restaurant manager for the security footage. It's all right here, the manager said. He pulled up the video on a tablet. The supervisors huddled around the screen. They watched the video in silence. First, they saw Scott eating peacefully. Then, they saw Miller walk in and aggressively approach the booth. They watched Miller scream and wave his hands. They watched Scott keep his hands on the table, perfectly calm. And then, they saw the moment Miller drew his weapon. There was no threat. There was no weapon in Scott's hand. There was no physical resistance. Miller had drawn a lethal weapon on a man who was sitting down eating a sandwich. Miller tried to spin a story to his boss. He made a furtive movement, Miller claimed. I thought he was reaching for a weapon. I had to protect my partner. The video proved that was a lie. Scott's hands never left the table until he was ordered to raise them. This is bad, one of the ICE supervisors whispered. This is really bad. The police captain walked over to Miller. We are filing a formal report, he said. You initiated a high-risk stop with 0 probable cause. Miller looked angry. I have authority under the Immigration and Nationality Act, he argued. I can question anyone. You can question, the captain said. You can't point a gun at someone's head because they won't talk to you. That's assault. Miller was stripped of his badge and gun right there in the parking lot. He was placed on immediate administrative leave. As for Scott, he was shaken but focused. He knew this wasn't just about him. He knew that if he hadn't been FBI, he might be in a jail cell right now. Or worse, he might be dead. I want copies of everything, Scott told the police. The video, the witness statements, the dispatch logs, everything. He wasn't just going to file a complaint. He was going to make sure the entire world saw what happened. But the consequences were just beginning. Someone had been recording on their cell phone, too. If you are enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep making these videos. By 3:00 p.m. that afternoon, a video hit the internet. A customer at the next table had filmed the standoff. The video was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. You could hear Miller screaming. You could see the gun pointed at Scott's face. The caption read, ICE agent pulls gun on guy eating lunch. Turns out the guy is FBI. Within an hour, the video had 10,000 views. By dinner time, it was trending on Twitter. By the next morning, it was the lead story on the national news. The internet was furious. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. One comment read, if they do this to an FBI agent, imagine what they do to regular people. Another said, this is what happens when you give a bully a badge. A third person wrote, that agent needs to be in prison, not on leave. The video was shared millions of times. Share it if you think others should see this. News trucks parked outside the restaurant. Reporters were interviewing the waitress who called 911. Legal experts were on TV explaining how many laws Miller had broken. The ICE public relations team tried to do damage control. They released a short statement. "We are aware of an incident involving our personnel. We are reviewing the matter internally." It wasn't enough. The public demanded answers. Senators were tweeting about it. Civil rights groups were organizing protests. Miller's face was everywhere. His history of bad behavior started to come out. Former victims recognized him on the news. They started calling reporters with their own stories. "He did the same thing to me," a shop owner told a local news station. "He came in screaming and threatened to arrest my staff." The narrative was clear. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, and now Miller had messed with the wrong person. But the real blow was coming from the courtroom. 3 weeks later, Agent Scott filed a federal lawsuit. He wasn't asking for an apology. He was suing for violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, assault, and emotional distress. His lawyers were aggressive. They demand everything. They wanted Miller's disciplinary records. They wanted the training manuals. They wanted emails between supervisors. During the discovery phase, the truth came out. The documents showed that Miller had been flagged for aggressive behavior before, but nobody did anything about it. His supervisors had ignored the warnings. The government lawyers knew they were in trouble. They tried to get the case thrown out. They argued that Miller had qualified immunity, which protects officers from being sued personally. But the judge said no. The judge ruled that any reasonable officer would know that pointing a loaded gun at a peaceful person is unconstitutional. The case would go to trial. The government did not want a trial. They didn't want Agent Scott on the witness stand telling a jury how his own government tried to kill him. They didn't want the security video played in court. So they opened their checkbook. They started negotiating a settlement. Usually, these cases settle for a few $100,000, maybe $1 million if it's really bad. But Scott refused to settle for cheap. He wanted to send a message. The negotiations dragged on for months. Finally, a number was reached. It was a number so big it made headlines around the world. The United States government agreed to pay a total of $22.7 million to settle the case. It was one of the largest settlements for an individual civil rights violation in history. The breakdown covered damages for the assault, the violation of rights, and the severe PTSD Scott suffered. As for Agent Miller, his career was over. He was fired from the agency. Because of the settlement and the public record, he would never work in law enforcement again. But the story didn't end with money. Scott didn't just walk away with a check. He used the moment to speak out. He wanted to make sure that the next person sitting in a diner didn't have to look down the barrel of a gun. The amount they paid was historic, but what Scott said next was even more powerful. On the day the settlement was announced, Agent Scott released a statement through his attorneys. He didn't brag about the money, he talked about the fear. "I have faced terrorists," his statement read. "I have kicked down doors looking for fugitives, but I have never been more afraid than I was in that restaurant." He explained that the trauma didn't go away when the police arrived. He still had nightmares about the gun. He still felt anxious in public places. "A badge is a heavy responsibility," he wrote. "It is not a license to terrorize. When we allow officers to act without consequences, we break the trust of the people we are sworn to protect." He had a message for the workers and regular citizens who face this every day. "I was lucky," he said. "I had a badge in my pocket. I had training. Most people don't. No one should be profiled while eating lunch. No one should fear for their life because an officer is having a bad day." He thanked the local police who saved him. He thanked the witnesses who spoke up. "Justice is not a check," he concluded. "Justice is change. I hope this case forces the agency to look in the mirror and fix what is broken." It was a powerful reminder that even the tough guys are human. This case wasn't just about two men. It exposed a broken culture. Statistics show that thousands of people are stopped without probable cause every year. Most of them don't have the resources to fight back. This settlement set a new standard. It proved that officers can be held accountable when there is video evidence and a strong victim. It forced the agency to rewrite its policies on when guns can be drawn. But for many, the question remains, what if he wasn't FBI? So let me ask you, do you think the outcome would have been different if Scott was a regular civilian? Do you believe 22 million is enough for a life-threatening mistake? Do we need stricter oversight for federal agencies operating inside the country? Because if we don't fix the training and the culture, then we're just waiting for the next Agent Miller, the next victim, the next tragedy. Comment below if you believe officers should carry personal liability insurance. If you think stories like this matter, hit that subscribe button. We're going to keep exposing these stories. We're going to keep demanding better. This isn't just about one bully or one agent. It's about all of us. See you in the next one.